is in Shritaketu, how Shritaketu was a devotee who was later on cursed to literally go to hell, and which he did and got a demon's body, and how Vitrasura, how the Lord protected and maintained him. And another one of the major Poshna stories is Indra, how Indra, as we'll come to hear, how he killed his guru. And as a result of that, lost control of the heaven to the Asuras, and how even through all of that, the Lord is giving, protection to even Indra. So in the telling of the story of Poshna as it relates to Indra, a little bit of the background story is given. So the guru that Indra is going to kill in the future, his name is Vishwarupa. He was a son of a Brahmana. His father's name was Twashta, and Twashta was the son of, I think, Aditi, who is one of the daughters of Daksha, the reborn Daksha that we heard about in the fourth canto. And so the background story building up to this is describing, starting with this chapter, is describing how Daksha is himself the son of the Prachetas, and how he, how he had the service of bringing forth progeny into the universe, and all these sort of things related to him. So this whole background story has been given in relationship to the Poshna of Indra. So that's how this development of the sixth canto is going on. So it starts off here in the sixth chapter with Parikshit Maharaj asking a question about progeny, how the praja is produced. We probably don't recall, but in the earlier cantos, it was described how the universe was populated by what is known as Prajapatis, or progenitors of the universe. So it seems to me that we don't believe in a theory of evolution, from less complicated forms of matter to more complicated forms of matter, but rather there's a complex form of matter known as the progenitors, and they are responsible for bringing forth the various species of life, humans, animals, the reptiles, birds, and so on. So this was covered a little bit in the third canto. And so Parikshit Maharaj, in the beginning of this chapter, he inquires about that, the progeny. So in giving the answer to that, he wants to talk about, Shukadeva Goswami wants to speak about the progeny coming from Daksha. So Daksha is the son of the Prachetas, and the Prachetas are the sons of Prachina Bharhi. So if you remember at the end of the fourth canto with the Puranjana story, we heard about Prachina Bharhi. He was a karmi who Narada Muni preached to and made him a devotee by showing him the fault of the path of karma through an allegory, that allegory being the Puranjana story. So before Narada Muni preached to him, Prachina Bharti has sent his sons, the Prachetas, to perform austerities in some location. I forget the name of the location. And while they were out performing austerities, so they could do the work of becoming the kings and bringing forth progeny, where they were out doing austerities for, I think, something like 10,000 years in order to do that, embrace that responsibility of their father. Their father was preached to by Narada Muni. He gave up the path of karma, embraced bhakti, and he renounced the kingdom. But he renounced the kingdom before his sons returned to take up the responsibility of rulership. So during that period of time, it seems that since there was no one to properly govern the state or the world, there was an overgrowth of trees. I don't know the connection, so don't ask. But there was an overgrowth of trees due to lack of proper agricultural enterprises. And so I guess the trees were just like overgrown and had taken over the joint. So when the Prachetas finally came out of the water, they had performed austerity for 10,000 years. They had darshan of Vishnu. Vishnu was very pleased by their cooperation, which is described there. He was very pleased. He gave benedictions to them. Actually, yeah, the Prachetas had pleased Vishnu by reciting a song that was given to them by Lord Shiva, the Rudra Gita. Anyway, having pleased him and received benedictions for their responsibility of rulership, they come out of the waters. They see their father is not there because he's long gone, having embraced the path of bhakti. And there's this overgrowth of trees, and they're like furious about this. Why they would be furious about it, it's hard to say, but the Bhagavatam points to their austerity because of their tapasya. The nature of tapasya is to make the heart a little bit rigid, and it seems a little bit easily disturbed. As a sidebar, for this reason, Srila Rupa Goswami, he tells us in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, after describing the angas of Vaidhi Bhakti, 64 of them are there. Then the last section of the Vaidhi Bhakti part is what is not considered an anga of Bhakti. So in that part, Srila Rupa Goswami informs us that Jnana is not considered an anga of Bhakti, or Vairagya is not considered an anga of Bhakti, which includes a lot of these rigid austerities because it makes the heart hard. And so anyway, that's just kind of a sidebar, just making a correlation there. So the Prachetas come out, they're extremely angered to see that the trees have been overgrown. And I guess Bhagavatam points to their austerities for their anger. And they began to burn all the trees to the ground with their mystic siddhi. So it must have been like a massive destruction going on. One can only really imagine it abstractly. So as a result of this, Soma, he's the moon god. He is considered as the lord of like the herbs and the trees. We hear from the Gita that the moon nourishes the plant life on earth. The moon by its rays having some sort of amrita inside, it nourishes the plant life. So Soma, who is the moon god, he comes down and he tries to pacify the Prachetas who are very angry. So he first attempts to pacify them. You know, this method in politics of, what do they call it? Samabheda Dana Danda. Politicians, they try these things. Sama means like you try to pacify with good common sense or logic to pacify the opposing party. So he's trying to pacify. He informs the Prachetas that your work is as protector of the praja. That is the main work of the king or the leader of the land, that he has to protect the praja. So part of that praja is the plant life. You need to protect them also. And that is too because the plant life itself is life for so many other in your kingdom, including human beings, including other species of life who depend on the various plants. So if you destroy all the plants, you'll also compromise or debilitate the others in your kingdom who depend on the plant life for their own survival. So the Lord has created existence in this way that one living entity is food for another. So if you wipe out one whole species, then you're also compromising other species of life. We had that sort of symbiotic, is it symbiotic is the right word to use? Sort of, yeah, this sort of symbiotic relationship to one another, where if you, like with certain species of life, they have a, like water life. I remember reading about this, it's been some years, like I was literally a kiddo. National Geographic was certain like aquatic life, they have like certain, how you say, like parasites or something of the sort, where there's a symbiotic relationship. So if you remove the parasite, the fish eventually ends up dying too. There's sort of like an interdependence between the species of life. So if you remove or destroy one species, that's going to negatively impact other species. So they give some argument like this with Prachetas. As a praja, you should be concerned about this. There was a few other arguments. There were words of pacification. That didn't work. So then they tried to do this process in politics known as Bheda. So the word Bheda means where you try to basically give some threat, or strike some fear in the heart of the person so that they'll become disinterested to pursue their objective. So, so I'm gonna try some beta tactic where he's saying by this simple activity, you will be destroyed. That also didn't work. So finally, he gave one daughter who was, I don't, I don't know. She's considered the daughter of the trees from one Apsara named Pramlocha. The backstory wasn't given, I don't think, any of the commentary, so I didn't see it there. In any case, he gives was considered as his daughter to the Prachetas. So they were pacified. There's this method in politics known as charity or dana. You kind of give them something that they want so that they'll chill out. So they gave, Soma gave the daughter, and in proper religious ceremony, she was accepted. And in her womb, she gave birth to Daksha. This is the same Daksha that we heard about in the fourth canto, who lost his head, later on got a goat's head, and then gave up that goat body due to humiliation. And then he took birth in a future Manvantara, which is the one that we're hearing about now. So it's the same Daksha there. He takes birth as Daksha. Daksha means expert. And in his case, it means expert in sex life, essentially, because he's a progenitor. So he has to bring forth the various species of life. So he's expert in the sex life. That is the meaning of the name Daksha in his particular case. So he takes birth from the womb of this Apsara, the daughter of this Apsara, the daughter of the moon god, or the daughter of the trees, as it were. And he grows into Daksha. And later on, he begins to do the work of populating the universe, as is the work of the progenitor. But he wasn't bringing forth sufficient population. So he realized that he needed greater empowerment. So he goes to the Vindhya Hills, some area, and to a holy place known as Aghamarshana, which probably means something like the destruction of Agha, sin. And he performs various rituals there and begins to offer what is known as the Hamsaguya prayers. So these prayers are not his prayers, of course. These prayers are prayers that come from the Shastra, come from the Vedas. So he begins offering these prayers unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead so that he may be empowered to do the work of populating the cosmos. So that's the background story to where we're at now. And then starting with verse number, I think 23, we begin hearing the Hamsakuya prayers. So we discussed like the first, 5-6 verses, but we're gonna go back because I'm sure no one remembers anything. I certainly didn't. And so we're gonna look at these Hamsakuya prayers, which happens, I really like these prayers for some reason. They speak about God quite generically, but they're very nice. Okay, so that's the background story to how we got where we're at here. So sharing my screen now, we'll look at the first verse of the Hamsaguya prayers. So they're saying here, Nama paraya vitatamubhutaye gunatraya bhasa nimitta bandave adrishtadhamne Gunatattva bhutibhir nivrittamanaya dade swayambhuve. Prabhupada's translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the illusory energy and the physical categories it produces. He possesses the potency for unfailing knowledge and supreme willpower, and he is the controller of the living entities and illusory energy. The conditioned souls who have accepted this material manifestation as everything cannot see him, for he is above the evidence of experimental knowledge, self-evident and self-sufficient. He is not caused by any superior cause. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So namaha, my obeisances unto the transcendence, paraya. My obeisances unto the transcendence. So how is he transcendental? So then the rest of the verse is basically modifiers of explaining the Lord's transcendence. The first being avitata anubhutaye, that he has unfailing vision or correct vision. Anubhutaye, avitata anubhutaye. He has correct vision. I was really trying to understand what this meant in the context of the transcendence. And I guess the sense here is that his vision is not distorted by the Maya Shakti. This is the main difference between God and the Jiva, of course, that God is not able to be eclipsed by the Maya Shakti because she exists outside and apart from him. Whereas the Jivas, our awareness is eclipsed by Maya. So our vision is distorted in so many ways. But avitata anubhutaya, the Lord has undistorted vision or correct vision because of his transcendence. Gunatraya abhasa nimitta bhandave. He is the transcendence is the controller of the gunatraya abhasa. So this term is referring to the jivas. Gunatraya means the three gunas of nature, and abhasa means a semblance. So the jivas, we have a semblance of being composed of the gunas of nature, right? Atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manyutaya nartam. Because although we are superior to the gunas of nature, we identify with them. And so we take our very selves to be mirror images, so to speak, of the gunas of nature, gunatraya. So gunatraya abhasa means the jiva shakti. And the mita means the cause of that three gunas of nature, or in other words, the Maya Shakti. So the Lord of the transcendence, he is the bandhave, he is the controller or the instigator of the Jiva Shakti and the Maya Shakti. So they cannot have any existence apart from the Supreme Lord. They are coming from him and they're pervaded by him, they rest on him, they return to him at the end of the creation. He is their controller. So therefore he is the transcendence. Gunatraya bhasa nimitta bhandave. Adrishta dhamne, he is not perceived. Dhamne, the word dhamne, like dhamma, can mean potency or effulgence. It can mean the holy places. It also can mean his form. So adrishta dhamne is taken as his form is not seen. Not seen by whom? By the jivas. Guna tattva buddhibir, whose consciousness is preoccupied with the tattvas of the gunas. So the tattvas of the gunas, they're 24 in number, 26 in number, 16 in number. They use different sort of counting system. In Sankhya, the Mahatattva, Nahankara, the Manas, Buddhi, the senses, the Tamatras, the Mahabhutas. These are called as the tattvas of the guna. So our consciousness is preoccupied with the gunas or the tattvas of the nature. So long as we're preoccupied with the guna tattva, we do not see the form of God. Triber gunamayer bharbar ibi sarvami tamjagat mohitam na abhijananti mam ebhya paramavya. Krishna says this in the Gita also, where he says the living entities are deluded by the three gunas of nature and therefore they do not see me. So of course, that's not the only reason we don't see Krishna, but it is the main reason we don't see Krishna. Later or a prominent reason, I'm going to say the main reason, but a prominent reason we don't see Krishna. Later in the Gita, when Krishna says, I know, he says that the jivas, due to my yoga maya, do not know me. Naham prakasha sarvasha yoga maya samavrita. I am not manifest to the jivas due to the curtain of my yoga maya. Curtain is a little bit of an addition. Queen Kunti uses the word curtain of yoga maya. So I'm not known to them So just as the curtain kind of covers the perception of the audience of the entity behind the curtain, is the entity behind the curtain covered by is the entity behind the curtain unable to see the audience because of the curtain? No. So this is verse 26 of chapter 7 Gita. He says, I know everything, past, present, and future, but me no one knows. Well, why doesn't anyone know you? And then he says, Icha dvesha samutena dvanda mohena bharata. Sarvabhutani samoham sargayantaparantaka. From the very outset of our birth, as soon as we take birth, then we are completely deluded by dualities due to the triggers, samutena, the triggers of raga and dvesha. In other words, we're so preoccupied with I like and what I don't like that we don't have any time to look beyond that. All of our time is eaten up by our raga and dvesha. So in this way, we do not know the Lord. So in any case, all of this is guna tattva buddhi. We are absorbed in the tattvas of the gunas of nature. So adrishta damne. So we're not seeing Bhagavan. We're not seeing the transcendence. Nivritta manaya. So nivritta manaya means the Lord who is unable to be measured. Part of the reason is because you can't even see him. So if you're trying to measure something, you have to be able to see it. And the other part of it is due to his infinite nature. So infinite nature, and that's what we'll come to see in the prayers, his infinite qualities and forms, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no end to it. So how can something that has no end be measured? In the Dhamma Mandana Lila, where Krishna is being tied by the mother Jasoda, so famous verses there describing Krishna when Mother Jasoda was trying to tie him. That Krishna has no inside or no outside, no prior, no posterior. In this way, something doesn't have inside. If you have to put a rope around an object, so it has to have clear dimensions to it in order for you to do that. So if God doesn't have any inside, any outside, any starting point, any end point, then how do you wrap anything around it? And this is the point, and it's bewildering because Krishna also has ankle bells on when he's running around. So the ankle bell requires you to put a rope around his little feet. So that was possible, but now this huge rope is given and it cannot go around. So why is this happening? So, well, he doesn't have any inside, outside, any starting point, any end point. So how you can wrap anything around him? And yet the ankle bells are there wrapped around. It's a little bewildering. Not a little, quite bewildering. So in any case, Nivritta Manaya, he is unable to be measured due to his transcendence. So Tade Swayambhuve. So I offer my obeisances to Swayambhu. So Swayambhu means one who is self-born. That means having no prior cause. Everything else in existence has a prior cause or a cause upon which it's resting, even though it's maybe co-eternal. Like the Maya Shakti is eternal, Jiva Shakti is eternal. All the forms of the Gaia, Swarup Shakti, that is also eternal. So all the Shaktis of Bhagavan, they are co-eternal with the Lord, but they are resting in the Lord. I always just give the simple example, the sun and the sunshine. So the sunshine and the sun are co-existent, right? You don't have the sun without the sunshine. And yet the sunshine is resting on the sun. The sun is not resting on the sunshine. So in the same way, the Lord and his Shaktis are co-eternal, but the Shaktis are resting on him, not the other way around. So he is Swayambhu, he is having no prior cause, he is the cause of everything. And the import here is that such a transcendental reality has to self-manifest in the seat of our awareness in order for us to really understand it in truth. Swayambhu. In other words, most of our knowledge, and we'll hear this in the next coming verses, our knowledge, our consciousness or our knowledge may be able to reveal things of this world. As far as our consciousness is concerned, it can reveal up to the extent of our own nature. That is up to that extent that we can have revelation of our own nature. Usually it reveals only the sense object which we're preoccupied with. But through certain spiritual techniques, we can go up to the revelation of our own Swarup as a spirit soul, as consciousness. But we cannot reveal that which is superior to us, or that which is our very basis for existence, which is the transcendence or God. So we are to know that transcendence, it has to self-manifest in the sanctum of our consciousness. And of course, like bhakti itself, or as sadhya, it doesn't self-manifest in the sanctum of one's consciousness that's kept nasty. Just like if you invite someone to your home and it's kept nasty, then they may leave, or they say, oh, you know what, actually something came up, I can't stay here. So the Lord will self-manifest in earnest and truth in the sanctum of consciousness that has prepared itself for such a self-revelation. So that's what Sadhana Bhakti is all about. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhya Kapunoy, Shravana Deshuddha Chitte Karayavidoy. We always quote this verse and explain it in weird ways. But this verse from Mahaprabhu, it's a verse that is echoing, well, it's a composition of Kaviraj Goswami, but in the voice of Mahaprabhu, describing, giving instructions to Sanatana Goswami. 22nd chapter of the Madhya Lila. So this verse is actually an echo, echo of the definition of Sadhana Bhakti given by Rupa Goswami. Kirti Sadhya Bhavat Sadhya Bhava Sasaranabhida. Nitya Siddhasya Bhavasya Prakattam Hridi Satyata. So echoing this verse, Kaviraj Goswami has Mahaprabhu say, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. So Krishna Prema is Nitya Siddha. Nitya Siddhasya Bhavasya. The goal of sadhana is bhava. So Rupa Goswami is describing bhava. What is the nature of bhava? He says, well, this bhava is Nitya Siddhasya, right? This Nitya means eternal and perfect. So it's not that it didn't exist and then the jiva, by his sadhana, brought it into existence. That would be a defect, because if that were the case, that would mean that this bhava isn't in fact eternal. And if it's not eternal, it can't be the goal of life. Nothing temporary can be the goal of life, because anything temporary will be the source of sorrow. That is just the nature of temporality. So if you say that bhava wasn't existing and then it was brought into existence by sadhana, then that would mean that this bhava is not the goal of life. So Rupa Goswami wants to answer that question. So he said, actually, no, this bhava is nitya, it's actually eternal, and it's perfect, siddhasya, there's no defect in it. Nitya siddhasya bhavasya, that is because it resides in the nitya siddhas of the spiritual world. So this bhava is existing already in the nitya siddhas of the spiritual world. And for those who have prepared their heart for it, then prakatyam hridi sadyata. Prakatyam hridi, this bhava that exists there in the nitya siddhas will appear or manifest prakatyam in the heart of the sadhaka who's made himself pure enough for the reception of it. And this is what I mean by sadhya. This is what I mean by sadhya. Otherwise, sadhana, the relationship is sadhana is a cause and sadhya is the effect. So that will make someone think that, oh, if I just do X, Y, Z, then that's going to lead to this inevitably. Nope, doesn't work like that. Actually, you do X, Y, Z to prepare yourself, and then the effect the result will come when it decides to come. Not that this leads automatically to that. And that means you determine when bhava comes up. Nope, you don't determine when bhava comes up, but you do determine how you keep your sanctum, the inner sanctum of your consciousness. That's on you. You should do that work. So Mahaprabhu, Kaviraj Goswami has Mahaprabhu echoing this verse saying, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhu Kabuno. So this Krishna Prema or bhava is eternal and perfect, but it is not a sadhya in the normal sense of the word, how it's normally used by people in this world. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte. If your chitta, your heart, the inner sanctum of consciousness, is made pure by the angas of Shravanam, Kirtanam, etc., sadhana bhakti, then saying that the inner sanctum is pure, then this bhava will self-manifest there. So bhava is self-manifest, right? Swayam prakashta rupaiva. Although it is self-manifest in the mind of the sadhaka who's prepared himself for it, bhasamana prakashtavat. It looks like it's coming from the mind. When you see someone having bhava, you think, oh, they're just like a materialistic person, but it's actually bhava, which has appeared in their mind and become one with it. So just like bhava doesn't self-manifest until one has prepared their consciousness for it, this is my whole spiel for telling all that. So swayambhu, God does not self-manifest until after you have bhava, right? So he is swayambhu, he is the first cause, he is having no other cause. And he is adrishtadane. So if you are to know him, then you have to prepare your consciousness for the reception of the gift of bhava. And then after bhava, then the Lord will self-manifest in that sacred space. Just like people speak about safe spaces. So the real safe space is the space that is made beautiful by bhakti. It's a safe space for Krishna to enter without having to worry about killing or slaying any demons or anything like that. So anyway, so adrisha damne, he is not saying because we're preoccupied with the gunas, but an hour from my obeisances unto Swayambhu. So carrying on with this theme of not being visible, adrisha damne, the next verse is spoken. So nayasa sakyam purusho avaiti sakyu. So the purusha, the jiva, he does not know, not avaiti. He does not know that the Lord is his friend. Yeah. Nayasa sakyam purusho avaiti sakyu. So he does not know the Lord's fraternity, who is his friend. In the Puranjana story, we may have remembered that Puranjana had a friend known as what was his name? I think his name was like Abhigyata, right? The unknown one. Now, Yasa Sakyam Purusho Avaiti Sakyu. So why is he called as a friend? We hear this epithet used a lot for Paramatma. Suridam Sarvabhutanam, he is a friend of all living entities. He is the friend that is not known. In the Upanishads and also in the 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear about two birds sitting in the tree of the body. One bird is trying to enjoy the fruits of the body, whereas the other bird is just the friend witnessing that. So one bird is the soul, of course, the other one being the super soul. And that soul who's enjoying the fruits, he does not know that the witnessing bird is there, who is his friend. Now, Yasa Sakyam Purusho Avaiti Sakyu. So why Paramatma call his friend? Because it is Paramatma whose Shakti allows for us to have any congress, which is really what it is, with matter. Otherwise, it would not be possible whatsoever. It is Paramatma who is given the faculties by which matter is revealed to our own awareness and the faculties by which we can pursue it after it's revealed to our own consciousness. Otherwise, that would suck. Like, you know it's there, but you can't move toward it. That would be like torture. It's like knowing that the cheesecake is there, but you can't move toward it, can't eat it, can't do anything about it. So he gives the faculties by which matter is revealed to us and by which we can pursue it. Of course, for those who've gotten mercy, they can also pursue that which is beyond matter, but most don't know that. So in any case, for this reason, he is called as the friend. Vyakta drishti. Vyakta drishti means the one who has manifested the faculties of matter. I have here in my notes, because I wrote it down, the verse that I'm often fond of quoting from 1087:2. Buddhindriya mano prana jananam asrijat Prabhu. So the Prabhu, Paramatma, he is given all the faculties, buddhi, indriya, manas, prana. And for that, we can pursue Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So for this reason, he is called as a friend. But he's a friend that no one knows. So you don't know who is giving you these faculties, but you're enjoying nicely. So Nayasa Sakyam Purusho Advaiti Sakyu. Sakavasam Samvatsara Pure Asman. He is living with us inside the material body. The one who is living with us inside the material body. So that is the imagery of the two birds from the Upanishads that we've already heard about. Vyakta Drishti. So he's manifesting all the faculties. So we don't know this person who should be known because he is our friend. He is a real friend, actually. No one else can be such a friend. Through thick and thin, the Paramatma is there. Even when you're in hell, the Paramatma is there. He's the one giving all the faculties, life after life. And when we're ready to stop our child's play and accept the adult responsibility of human life and pursue, the kingdom of God, he is also there to help along the way. So we don't know this friend. And so an example is given. Guno yata gunina. It is like the sense objects which do not know the senses that reveal them, right? Just like the computer does not know the eye, which is revealing its form, right? The music that we'll be playing does not know the ear, the sense of hearing, which is revealing sound to it. So in the same way, the jiva is standing as like an object in relationship to that supernatural reality. And so we do not know the Paramatma in the same way that the object does not know the sense that reveals it. So this also speaks to the point of the need for self-revelation because our own consciousness cannot reveal that higher order reality. Tasmai Maheshaya Namaskaromi. So my obeisances unto the Supreme Controller. Okay, so last verse we'll do here because it's all of these related to the same thing. This verse is just describing furthermore that analogy. So the analogy said, just as the object cannot know the sense that reveals it, but that is because the object is inanimate in nature. It has no consciousness in it. So if the computer had consciousness in it, then it would be able to know the sense that revealed it. That's kind of the sense of it here. So because it is inert, it cannot know. But the jiva is conscious. So being conscious, we should be able to know the conscious Lord. That's sort of the hypothetical question or purvapaksha presented by, I think, Sri Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary. Why should it? Just like I know computer, and I know the body, I know the mind, the inner organ, but through my own, because of the light of my own consciousness. So why not also God? Why can the light of my own consciousness reveal God? So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in this regard tells a story. I've told this story many times over the years, but he has a story of the king who wanted to see the sun at night. Just the name of the title is retarded. The king who wanted to see the sun at night. So the king had some foolish ministers there. So the ministers were like, yes, we'll make it possible. So one minister, he took candle light and put it all over the city in order to reveal the sun. But that stupid little candlelight can't reveal the sun. That's just utterly foolish. So another minister, he had scientific prowess. So he made these huge, beams of light. I just have this image of like the Batman signal. Sorry, American, Western born. So a whole bunch of those, and he, shot up into the sky. Still, the sun was not revealed by that. So finally, one wise minister, he came forward and said, you have some very foolish servants, and you yourself are also a fool. You cannot see the sun at night. That is not possible. You can only see the sun by the mercy of the sun rays, right? Because the sun rays, they come and they illumine the eye. And when the eye is illumined by the sun rays, then you can see objects in this world for what they are. And you can also see its source, the sun. So similarly, until we are illumined by the rays of bhakti, if you will, bhava, then we cannot see the world in its true form, actually, as rooted in Bhagavan. We see matter as rooted in itself, and we see ourselves as rooted in matter. That's why we keep pursuing it. So we don't have true vision even of this world. But if your light is illumined by bhakti, you'll see the world in its true light, and you will also be able to see Bhagavan. And that is only by his mercy. So you can see the sun only when the sun gives mercy, not otherwise. So the purport is like that. We can see Bhagavan only when Bhagavan gives mercy. That is the purport of this next verse. As a question, the Purva Paksha is coming. Why can't consciousness see God in the same way that it can see other objects in this world? Yes, by the little, by your little light of consciousness, you can see all the way up to the 3 gunas of Prakriti, but you cannot see God. Just as the sun cannot be seen at night, or if you're trying to illumine the forest that you're walking in with a flashlight or the light on your phone. Sometimes you're in forests, camping out with some friends, and you use a light on your phone. With that light will reveal hardly anything. So our tiny, insignificant, infinitesimal light of consciousness cannot reveal Bhagavan. That is the meaning of the verse here. So here's a verse, Deho savaksho manavobuto matram atmanam anyam chavidhu paramyat. Sarvam punam veda gunam shatatgyo na veda sarvam yamanantamide. So the first 2 lines are the various aspects of the material nature. The body, the life airs, the different senses, knowledge acquiring, working senses, the mind, which includes buddhi and ahankara. Bhuta means the gross elements, matra means the subtle causes of those elements, sound, touch, form, etc. So these objects, that's the first line, they cannot know their own self, atmanam, because they're inert. So they cannot know their own self, anyam, they cannot know the nature of other things also, anyam cha. Vidu paramya, and they also cannot know that which is beyond them, namely the individual conscious soul. So that's obvious because they're inert. Sarvam puman veda gunam shatachkyo. But the jiva, he can know all these things. Sarvam puman veda. Puman here means the jiva. Sarvam veda gunam. He can know all these things, including the gunas that are the causes of them. Chatajgyo. So tajgyo means he can know all of that, basically. That is the meaning here. Sarvam veda tajgyo. He can know all of that. Because his consciousness is the parapakriti, right? Gita's language, they're aparapakriti, parapakriti. So parapakriti means sentience. He has awareness. So that which is aware can know that which is in an inferior category, namely the aparapakriti. So he can know all of that. Because that infinitesimal light of consciousness can reveal the whole cosmos, basically. So he can know all that, but naveda sarvam gamananta ide. But he cannot know the omniscient infinite. So my respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Lord. He cannot know for the reason which I've already given. Or the other meaning here in the tatgyo means he can know that. So like in the phrase tat tvamasi, you are that. Tat padarthagam means knowledge of Brahman or God. Tvam padarthagam means knowledge of the jiva. So tat gyo means you can know tat. Tat means you can know Brahman or you can know God, basically. But you just said he can't know God. So then the meaning here is he can know God, but because God is the infinite, sarvagyam anantam, you cannot know the extent of his glory. So you can know him, but you cannot know him completely because he has infinite qualities and infinite form and infinite names and so on. So in that sense, you cannot know the end of him. Although you may know him to some degree if you, by spiritual technique, become realized. We already talked about that in the first part of the class. So that this tat gyo is having the 2 meanings there. That you can know all of matter, but the omniscient infinite you cannot know because you can't see the sun at night. So I've already described that. Or Tagyo means you can know God. For the Jiva Mukta, he could know to some degree, but he cannot know the end of God because of his infinite qualities. So this is how the Hamsa Guhya prayers are kicking off. Very nice. Next prayer will describe the person is going into the samadhi of an impersonal or personal type. And samadhi is really the safe space for God, the sacred space, the space that's prepared for him. It's called samadhi. And in that samadhi space, where one is detached from the connection with matter, in that space, God self-manifests himself. So you can experience Anubhava. So that we'll look at tomorrow and some other verses. Or Monday, excuse me, it's already Friday. Okie dokie. So I'm gonna pause there and see. It doesn't look like there's any questions in the chat box. So does anyone want to say anything before we skedaddle? No? We can, okay, now I can ask, does anyone have a reflection? Also a note to that. Oopsies. God known by his own mercy. You're like scrambling. Let me think of something. Yeah, this one. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, I have one question. So it says that the Prachetas, they got angry, but I'm wondering that they had God realization, like they had seen Vishnu face to face. So it means like they must be in the stage of Prema then.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then it should not have any. They should not have any anger, right? Then.
Why?
Like material anger then.
Yeah, I remember when we first studied this chapter, that came up for us also. The Prachetas are quite realized. Also, Dhruva was quite realized as well. And after getting realization of the Lord, he still showed great anger toward the, what do they call it? The yakshas, right? And started destroying whole armies of the yakshas. So how to explain? I don't know the answer to that question. How they, I mean, there's always the cheap way out, not a cheap way out, but that we always have that card. Whenever we can't explain anything, we just say, Leela, next question. I feel it. That could be the answer also, but because I haven't meditated on it deeply and come to that conclusion, it's a cheap way out for me. So I don't know the answer to that question. Because we hear that we follow the path and we attain Godhead, but we often not talk about mercy. What is the threshold for God to be pleased by us? I mean, how much is needed? It's an interesting question. Sorry, Tamir, I don't know the answer to that question. I actually not incidentally, because Agape had asked a couple of times about the Dhruva Maharaj's anger. So I did message Hari Prashad about that, and he sent me an answer. It was a long answer actually on WhatsApp, but I may not have shared it to the Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya group like I had meant to. So let me see if I can find it. I'll have to scroll up in my WhatsApp to get it. Luckily, we don't message that often for it to be hard to find. But he gave some insight to that question because it's quite a dilemma. Dhruva also attained darshan, the Lord. His head was touched by the conch shell of the Lord. And then, and then later on, he just destroys, seems like armies of yakshas, just slaughtering them indiscriminately. So how is it possible for such a elevated devotee to do such a thing? So some answer was given, but I don't remember. I don't have the answer.
Yes, so and then one similar question. So it came up last week also, like that, like before the Ras Leela, the gopis thought that they were very fortunate, and that's why they became proud and Krishna disappeared. And then the second instance, it came that like Srimati Radhika, she was thinking that Krishna is only with me and not with the other gopis, and then again Krishna disappeared. So similar question, like again, like if they are all Nitya Siddhas, so how can they become proud?
Yeah, that one is a little even different than what like the Dhruva Maharaj story portrayed us. So the Rasa Leela or Nitya Leela, the way the Leela progresses, you can say, is there's a polarity engine. And on one end of the pole, there's Sambhoga, and on the other end of the pole, there's Vipralamba. And Vipralamba serves to make the Sambhoga more relishable. And then the Sambhoga, the experience of the Sambhoga makes the Vipralamba ecstatic and relishable. And that's how the Leela is moving. Just like when you ride a bicycle, right? You got to one pedal down, the other pedal comes up, and then that pedal down, the other pedal comes up. And that way the bicycle is moving, right? So the Leela, Nitya Leela is moving by this polarity engine of Sambhoga and Vipralamba. So there, all the acharyas are giving explanation about the function of that pride. That pride is not the pride of the material world, although it could be extrapolated as some sort of lesson for the sadhaka. But that pride is the pride that is part of the polarity engine, meant for servicing the Leela by creating a situation of separation. Because by the pride, Krishna disappears. And in the spirit of separation, the gopis go into madness, Divya Mada, they search for Krishna. And then when they find Krishna at long last in chapter 32, it was all worth it. And that way the Leela is moving, just like the bicycle moves by the pedals going down and up like that. So that is even a categorically different thing than what we hear about with the Prachetas or Dhruva Maharaj. So we have to look that up.
Okay, Prabhu. And then this Vipralamba, like, is this absent in Dwarka? Like, is it present only in like Vrindavan?
There is some type of separation that is experienced everywhere. We hear there are four types of Vipralamba, right? Purvaraga, Man, Prema Vaicitya, and Pravas. Right? These are the four types of Vipralamba mentioned. Purvaraga means, the awakening of love before meeting the beloved. Mana is a separation that comes from being angry with the beloved. So you feel, I don't want to see him. Prema Vaicitya means even when you're with the beloved, there's an anticipation that they will leave, that they're just about to leave. And so you experience separation even when you're with the beloved. And Pravas means when the beloved has actually gone elsewhere. Like for the gopis, when he goes to Mathura and Dwarka, they experience Pravas. So of course that Pravas, that long Pravas only happens in the Bhoma Leelas in the material world, not the Nitya Leelas in the spiritual world. So in Dwarka, they experience Prema Vaicitya. A few verses like that in Srimad Bhagavatam describing their experience of that type of Vipralamba. They are with Krishna, but they are, feel his imminent separation. He's going to go elsewhere. And then they become scared and go into a spirit of separation. A whole nother can of worms.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Shamsaki is saying that because we hear that we follow the path, we attain Godhead, but we often don't talk about mercy, right? What is the threshold for God to be pleased by us? I mean, how much is needed? First of all, we can say that the whole path of bhakti from sadhana to the attainment of sadhya is a path of grace, obviously, because you need the grace of a sadhu to even come in contact with bhakti. And then after that, you need the grace of many more sadhus, not one or two, but many sadhus to help nourish that bhakti after you've gotten the seed by grace. When you're progressing in the path of sadhana, we're so fortunate that we'll meet many sadhus in our life to help nourish that seed. So that is also grace, just to grow the bhakti. And then to get the final beatitude, that is also grace. In the form of bhava, prema, that is also grace. So the whole path is a path of grace for sure.
We don't often think about that element when we're performing sadhana. We take for granted, oh yeah, I got, I'm chanting, oh yeah, I got sadhu sangha, I got, this one, that one's gonna be there, so I'm good to go. All these things are taken for granted because we're foolish conditioned souls. What can we do? We can't help ourselves. But actually, all of it is grace from beginning to end. It is grace only. It is a path of grace. So we're encouraged to express gratitude or think about the grace that's come into our lives with gratitude, so that we don't become disconnected from the truth that everything I have in my life, devotionally speaking, at least, especially, I should say, not at least, but especially, is due to grace. But to this question, which is an interesting question, what is the threshold for God to be pleased by us? That's a very interesting question, actually. In some ways, that threshold is created by us, because Krishna says, so, according to how they surrender, and in accordance with their surrender, I reciprocate. So, Radha Jivana, Gopal and I were reading yesterday from one nice book, and it pointed out this nice sentence: if your goal in chanting japa is to finish your japa, then that's what you'll get. You'll finish your japa, and Krishna will be pleased by that, because that's how you set the bar. That's how you set the bar. You say, hey, the bar is, I just want to, if I could just finish my japa, that will be it now. All right, cool. So you finish your japa, and Krishna is pleased by that. Certainly, why would he not be? He's very kind. He said, I reciprocate in accordance with the nature of your surrender. So if the nature of our surrender is like that at least I'm chanting my rounds and I just want to finish my round, that's it. Then he'll reciprocate with that, and he'll be pleased by that. The problem is we won't be pleased by that. As far as the concern of the Bhagavatam, which is, what is that sadhana by which Atma supersedity, by which the self can be fully joyful, right? This is one of the foundational questions of the Bhagavatam in the first canto. The sages said Shastra is speaking about many different paths, each having different divisions. We want you to tell the essence of all those paths, the paradharma, by which the self will be fully joyful. So if our sadhana is, I just want to finish my rounds, then Krishna will be pleased with that. So in that sense, you're setting a threshold, but you won't be pleased by that. I mean, because the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. We finish our japa and we're not happy. So if the threshold of our surrender is, I want to please Krishna, and I just happen to know that he's pleased by prema, specifically Braja prema. That's the thing that really pleases Krishna. And that's the threshold of your sadhana. That I need to do whatever it takes to get the type of love that pleases Krishna, which means Braj Bhav, which means the path of Raganuga Bhakti, which is why we studied that book, Rakvartma Chandrika. Then the threshold by which God is pleased is changed because of the strength of your desire to please him. So this is a very interesting question how you've worded it. What is the threshold for God to be pleased by us? In a lot of ways, our own desire sets the threshold. Now, Krishna is very kind, so he can be satisfied by practically anything, any little bhakti done also. But the problem is we won't be satisfied if we don't, take it to the full degree that we could. So how much is needed? How much is needed depends on the desire that you have for that loving communion with Bhagavan, with Krishna. So if the goal is just to finish your japa, you don't need much. And just don't, turn your phone on. And the first thing when you get up in the morning, just pop, finish your job, get it done, and you're good to go. Otherwise, if your desire is Raj Bhav, and that too, if you have like the Kamanuga type, so the type of for sort of sacred congress with the Supreme Lord, then you'll know how much is needed. Tadami buddhi yogam tam yanama payantite. And even if you don't know immediately, you'll get all sorts of inspiration from within, from Krishna, what you need to do to get that. So that's on us. That's the hard part about spiritual life, that the ball is in our park. The ball, as the saying goes in America, ball in your park. So that's on us. Yeah, so okay, threshold of our surrender to the level what it takes to please Krishna all boils down to what we want and how we want. Yeah. A lot of spiritual life, a lot of questions get immediately reconciled once you discover what your ruchi is in Krishna consciousness. Then everything becomes crystal clear, in a sense. Otherwise, just like, for example, in ISKCON, they have a big debate about whether or not women can be gurus. Right? There's a big debate. But if you have ruchi, there's no question of a debate in your head for this. Once you know what you want in Krishna consciousness, then whoever can help you get it, then that's your guru. Gender is not going to come up in your mind as any sort of obstacle or, well, what about this rule? What about that rule? Nope. Can they give me what I want? Then, I must surrender to them. I must learn from them. I must, because I'm trying to get this thing, that which will please Krishna the most. And if they got it, then I'm going to surrender to them. But because people have no ruchi, so then they're dependent upon vidhi, right? So there's like, well, does the organization say it's okay? And they depend on all the rules. So that comes up because people don't have any ruchi. They have no taste for spiritual life yet in the real sense. So they depend on these rules and things get a little complicated. So it is really important that we somehow discover what our taste is in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, we may be lost in the impersonalism of status quo. Okay, so we'll stop here. Nice questions. Thank you for participating a little. I'll see you all Monday, I suppose. Hariam Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go permanently. Hari Hari Bollo.